And now we can build out the UI of our RAG application in React. We'll start by starting our project with npm run dev. We'll then go back to VS Code and we'll copy our import.ts file and change the copied file to actions.ts. We'll get rid of this and keep our init client function and get rid of this call. We want to build out our page now. And so in app, we'll open page.tsx and we'll start to build out the UI of our application. Get rid of this h1, create a div to house our application. We'll add some Tailwind classes to center our objects and justify them as well. And then we'll give a padding top of 12. And inside this, we'll use our image tag. And so this is image from Next.js. So we'll have to import image from next/image. Actually, that's the wrong format. We'll put our logo here. Give this a width of 48. The source image. Say Weaviate logo. Really quickly, we'll set the height as 360 and do the same thing for the width. Now that we have the image out, we'll import our header component and we'll pass in the text vector search with Weaviate. And then we want to fix the styling of it, so we'll get rid of this and put that just above. Right, perfect. We'll also import our search result component. However, we haven't built this out yet. And so we'll go into components and open search results. Right now it says search results, and so that should work fine. This is a client component. And what we want to do first is initialize a couple variables. And so we'll initialize search term, which is our user's input, and say set search term as use state. We'll do the same for search. Set search, and then use this, initialize this as false. We'll also initialize loading and set loading as false as well. And we'll initialize search response and set search response to store our search result and initialize this as null. We'll then take advantage of Weaviate and its type system and type this as Weaviate return and pass in wiki as the type. We have wiki available in our types.ts file. Back to search term, we'll pass the option of null as a response. And lastly, we'll say const is pending, start transition, and we'll use the use transition hook. Great, now that we have all of that initialized, we'll create a function called handle search, which will handle our semantic search from our front end. So async, taking no parameter. And here we'll set our search to false and set loading to true. And then we'll check if our search term, i.e. the query that the user inputs, is longer than 0. And when that is met, we'll start a transition. And then in this, we'll assign and then we'll say const search response is equal to await vector search. And so we'll need to create a function called vector search and pass in our search term. So at the moment, vector search does not exist. We'll go into our actions file, so in actions.ts, and we'll say export. So we can export this function. We'll change fetch data to be called vector search. And we'll keep all of this the same. We'll add a parameter here called search term, which is of type string, and pass that in as the argument to our near text search. And so search term will be what we search for. We still have a limit of 5, and we'll return our response. Save. And then we'll go back into our search result component, and we'll import vector search from our action. And so now we don't have that throwing an error. And then after this, we can say set search response to search response and set search to true, and then set our loading to false. We'll create a space there. We'll get rid of this and the div and start to add styling to our file. We'll import container as a start, and inside that we want to import input cover, and in input cover we'll pass in our input tag and pass a couple items. So this is where users will enter that search item. So we want this to be of type text. We want the ID to be search term, and as a placeholder we want this to say, what are you looking for? And then we want this value to be search term. And so this will send what the user searches for to our server action, which will then make that semantic search. And then we'll define an onChange, the arrow function, and we'll say set search term to current target dot value, and then give it a class name for styling as input main. Next up, import our cover, and in that we'll create a button that we use to search or to trigger our handle search function. And this button will say search. We'll give it some attributes, the class name of button primary. We'll say on click, e.prevent default, and then handle search. And then below cover, we want to actually display our search result. So say search. If we have search as true and we have a search response, let's then display our vector search result and pass response as our search response. And then close this tag. And then alternatively, if we're loading, or if loading is true, we want to display our loading component and save. And now, before we actually run our application, we need to go to our action.ts, and for it to actually be a server action, we need to specify and say use server, right? And after setting our use server, go back to search results, just check everything. Let's take these higher. This is supposed to be in set transition. And so now we get a little error from TypeScript. We'll go into our action.ts and we'll pass wiki as a type. And when we go back, we now have type safety on both sides, as TypeScript knows what it's receiving from its server action and what it's expecting on its front end. We'll save this in our browser. We'll search songs about color. We see our search and we see our results. And that is how you build out the UI to run vector search in React using Weaviate.